Good day everyone, I'm Thandi Mmachaka, working for the Department of Water and Sanitation based in the Eastern Cape Regional Office. I'm responsible for water quality management, and today I'm going to be taking you through the implementation of the National Water Act and also share with you some of the water quality issues that we encounter in catchment management. Firstly, let's look at the legislative requirements. We see that the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa is the foundation of all law, meaning that it is the supreme law and all other laws in South Africa must be consistent with it. More critically, the obligation imposed by the Constitution must be fulfilled. I'm going to take you through or give you a synopsis background on the legislative framework for environmental law in South Africa. As I've said, all law in South Africa starts with the Constitution, and since today we are speaking on the environment, the applicable obligation will be in terms of Section 24 of the Bill of Rights, which guarantees everyone the right to an environment that is safe and not harmful to one's health and well-being. So we also see that in terms of Section 27, the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of everyone's right to have access to sufficient food and water. So from the Constitution, we then see the promulgation of the National Environmental Management Act, which is normally referred to as NEMA. So this NEMA is a framework legislation designed to give effect to the Section 24 of the Bill of Rights. So under NEMA, we then see the promulgation of the specific Environmental Management Acts, which are normally referred to as SEMAs. And today I'll talk to one of those SEMAs, which is the National Water Act 36 of 1998. The main purpose of the National Water Act is to ensure that South Africa's water resources are developed, protected, used, controlled, managed and conserved in a sustainable and equitable manner for the benefit of the present and the future generation. The National Water Act is administered by the Department of Water and Sanitation. And in South Africa, the state has appointed the Minister of the Department of Water and Sanitation to be the custodian of the water resources. So now let's see how the Department of Water and Sanitation achieved the objective of law. In terms of Section 21 of the National Water Act, we have 11 water use activities the department regulates to ensure that the objectives are achieved. So these are 11 water uses. They are from Section 21A to Section 21K. So they normally referred to as Section 21A, B, C until we get to K. So I'll be taking you through each water use. Section 21A is taking water from a water resource. Water resource could be a river, groundwater, estuary, a wetland, or even a dam. And it could be taken for different purposes. Just made an example there. You can see this other water user is taking for irrigation purpose, and then this gentleman here is taking for reasonable domestic use. We have Section 21B, which is storing of water in any impoundment. It could be off-channel dam, in-stream dam, or even a JoJo tank. Section 21C, which is the impeding or diverting of the flow of water in a water course. And then we also have Section 21I, which is always married with Section 21C, which is altering the bed, banks, or characteristics of a water course. You see there with the examples that I gave. The image on your left, it shows that the river was diverted from its original flow. And then the second image there, it shows the weir that was constructed within a water course that altered the bed and the banks of a water course. Section 21D is engaging in a stream flow reduction activity. There is afforestation or plantation. Section 21E is engaging in a controlled activity identified as such in Section 37, subsection 1. An example of that is irrigating with treated effluent. Section 21F is discharging of waste or water containing waste into a water resource. Section 21G is disposing of waste in a manner which may be detrimental impact on a water resource. An example is oxidation ponds or evaporation ponds. Section 21H is disposing in any manner of water which contain waste from or which has been heated in any industrial or power generation process. So the difference between 21G and H is that G was never heated, and 21H is wastewater that has been through an industrial process. Section 21J is removing, discharging, or disposing of water found underground if it is necessary for the efficient continuation of an activity. So this normally for mining activities wherein water is dewatered, so that mining activities can continue. And lastly is Section 21K, which is using water for recreational purposes. An example is swimming or even canoeing. Let's look at the strategies developed by the department to keep water resources healthy by controlling the impacts from the water use activities we just discussed. Number one, we have resource directed measures. These are measures developed to protect the water resource for their sustainable utilization. RDM consists of three important aspects. Number one is classification, which is setting of appropriate levels or classes for protection of a water resource. And we have the reserve, which is the quantity and quality of water required to satisfy basic human needs by securing basic water supply for the people, and also to protect aquatic ecosystem in order to secure ecological sustainable development and use of relevant water resource. And number three, we've got resource quality objectives. This provides goals within the management class. They are set by the minister during the process of classification of significant water resources in South Africa. And the main purpose of the RQOs is to establish clear goals relating to the quality of the relevant water resource. The second strategy is the source directed measures, which specify criteria for controlling water resources activity and their associated impact on the aquatic ecosystem. They are imposed through the water use authorization, be a license or a general authorization, through regulations and best practice guidelines, and also by providing incentives to the water users. Section 22 of the National Water Act provides 5 different ways in which the 11 water users could be authorized. We've got Schedule 1, which is mostly using water for reasonable domestic use, taking water for drinking, or taking water for irrigating your small garden, but it should not be for commercial purpose. Abstracting for livestock watering, storing of water from your roof, or using water for recreational purposes. Number 2 is general authorization, which is where the department issue a notice in the government gazette authorizing a category of persons to use water subject to the conditions stipulated in that government gazette. So we've got a general authorization that has been published for water quality related water users, for CNI, and for A and B water users. So if a water user fall within the ambit of a general authorization, that water use must be registered with the department, and the general authorization is only valid and reviewed every 5 years. Number 3, we've got existing lawful water use. This is the water that has been lawfully used during the qualifying period. If the water use was not used during the qualifying period, it may not be declared as an existing lawful water use. And this existing lawful water use is determined through what we call the validation and verification process, where the extent of the water use is validated and also verify if the extent was lawful during the qualifying period. And then we've got the dispensing with the requirements of the National Water Act. So this where we have a memorandum of agreement with our sister department. In this case, we've got a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Environmental Affairs, specifically for authorization of land facade. So the department issued what we call the record of decision, the ROD, to the Department of Environmental Affairs. So this ROD will have conditions that must be incorporated into the waste management license. So the water user does not have to apply for a separate water use license from the department. And then we've got lastly the water use license. A person who wants to use water which may not be permissible as existing lawful use under general authorization or under Schedule 1 needs to apply for a water use license. This water use license is for high impact water users, where specialized studies will be required, and the specialist studies must provide environmental aspects and the impact associated with them, and also mitigation measures to ensure the environment or the receiving environment is protected from that proposed development. Now let's see how the principle of duty of care is implemented through the National Water Act. Section 19 of the National Water Act states that an owner of a land or a person in control of a land which causes or has caused or is likely to cause pollution of a water resource must take all reasonable measures to prevent any such pollution from occurring, recurring, or continuing. And they must also take reasonable measures to ensure this is rehabilitated to its original state. You can see there an example of an overflowing manhole. So the owner of that infrastructure needs to ensure that the cleanup takes place and also rehabilitate the affected environment. Section 20 of the National Water Act provides guidance as to how the department need to respond when there is an emergency incident. So if there is an oil spillage from a truck, how should the department respond, and which measures needs to be taken contained under that section 20. Now let's look at the offenses in terms of the National Water Act. Section 151 of the National Water Act provides a list of offenses. Number 1, it states that no person may use water otherwise than as permitted under this act, fails to provide access to any books, account, document, or asset when required to do so under this act, fail to comply with the condition of an authorization, fail to comply with the directive issued under section 19, 20, 53 or 118, unlawfully and intentionally tamper or interfere with any waterwork or any seal or measuring device attached to a waterwork, fail or refuse to give data or information or give false or misleading data or information when required to give information under this act, fail to register an existing lawful water use when required to do so by the department, intentionally refuse to perform a duty or obstruct any other person in the exercising of any power or performance of any of that person's duties in terms of the act, unlawfully and intentionally commit any act or omission which pollutes or likely to pollute a water resource, unlawfully and intentionally or negligently commit any act or omission which detrimentally affect or is likely to affect a water resource, fail to register a dam with safety risk, fail to comply with the temporary restriction on the use of water in terms of item 6 of Schedule 3, and commit contempt of the water tribunal. Let's look at the different types of enforcement actions that the department can institute against a transgressor. Number one is informal mechanism wherein verbal or written warning are issued. And number two, you've got administrative actions wherein a directive or pre-directive can be issued against a transgressor, wherein we can withdraw or suspend an authorization or restrict a supply to a water resource. Number three is the criminal prosecution. This goes to court. However, the elements of crime must be proven beyond reasonable doubt. And number four is taking civil measures against the transgressor, whereby the law of delict must be proven, and the court will then issue the interdict to the transgressor. Let's look at the water quality challenges that we faced with in catchment management. We will see that we've got dilapidated over-age infrastructure, sewer infrastructure to be more specific. You see that we've got a manhole that is overflowing. So that overflowing manhole will eventually discharge that raw sewage into a water resource. Number two, you've got heavily polluted stormwater. So in some cases, you'll see that that overflowing manhole is either going to discharge into a water resource, or it's going to discharge into a stormwater channel, which will then discharge into a water resource. And we also see that some industries are also discharging their heavily polluted wastewater, untreated wastewater, into the stormwater channel. And also informal settlements as well are a problem. They are using the stormwater to discharge or to dispose of their grey water as well. And another challenge is siting of human settlement and wastewater management. Waste management services. You will see that in most cases you'll find there is a community that is sited just in close proximity to a water resource, and that community will be disposing their solid waste just next to the water resource. And you know, the municipality, they come and pick up this or collect this waste, but now the problem is the frequency in which this municipality come and collect the waste. It's not enough in most cases, so that waste end up being disposed into the water resource by the community. The other one is unlawful water use activities in the catchments. You'll have farmers that claim that not necessarily farmers but water users that will claim that they were not aware that the water use activity that they are undertaking triggered our legislation and needed to be authorized prior to commencement of such an activity. Now let's look at the interventions we are implementing to address some of the identified water quality challenges. Number one, we are implementing the SUDS Treatment trail, which is the Sustainable Urban Drainage System in the Magman Canal, wherein we are treating the heavily polluted stormwater that is impacted by industrial areas. So there what we proposed is to use those 5 tanks to treat the industrial waste using biomimicry, which is using natural materials to clean this wastewater. So there you're going to have sedimentation, we've got filtration with sand, we've got filtration with stones, we've got biodegradation whereby bioenzymes are introduced into the treatment, and we've got floating wetlands, and then from there we've got soils, and then the treated water then goes back into the canal. So just to give you a picture there, so you'll see the first bottle there is the water that was taken from the canal, and then this is the water in tank number 1, the water in tank number 2, the water in tank number 3, and the water in tank number 4. So you can see there with just the turbidity and the cleanness of the water that comes out of that treatment trail. Number 2, it's using bioremediation for stormwater retention ponds. We've got a series of stormwater retention ponds in the Swartkops River catchment. So this has been implemented in the Swartkops River catchment, As I've indicated that we've got a problem with settlements. Most of them, they use the stormwater channels and the stormwater infrastructure to dispose and discharge the grey water. So we are trying also to treat water that comes from the stormwater retention ponds that are discharging directly into a water resource. So there we are introducing floating wetlands and also introducing the bioenzymes to treat that waste before it goes into water resources. Number 3, we are using a combination of ozonation and then also the photolysis for wastewater disinfection. So we know that normally our wastewater treatment works, they use chlorination as their disinfection for the disinfection process. So in this case, we want to determine the effectiveness of using these two mechanisms individually and also as a combined. These slides provide a list of documents that you can read if you want more details on what I've just presented. So you can go through the National Water Act, you can also go through the National Water Resource Strategy 2, and the General Authorization for Water Quality Related Water Uses, the General Authorization for Section 21 CNI, the General Authorization for Section 21 A and B, and also Water Use License and Appeal Regulation. That's all from me, colleagues. I hope this was informative. Thank you.